The untold story about Jesus goes far beyond what most of us learned in Sunday school. While billions know him as the central figure of Christianity, few understand the complex historical context that shaped his life and legacy. Let's dive into what history actually tells us about this enigmatic figure who changed the course of human civilization. Jesus was born around 4 BCE during a time of intense political turmoil. Galilee, where he grew up, wasn't some quiet rural landscape, but a hotbed of rebellion against Roman occupation. The Romans had conquered Judea in 63 BCE, and by Jesus' time, revolutionary movements were everywhere. This context matters because Jesus wasn't preaching in a vacuum. He was speaking to people desperate for liberation. Most people don't realize that we have zero contemporary written records of Jesus from during his lifetime. Not a single word. The earliest writings about him came decades after his death, with Paul's letters appearing around 50 to 60 CE, followed by the Gospels between 70 to 100 CE. This doesn't mean he didn't exist. We have stronger historical evidence for Jesus than for many ancient figures, but it does mean everything we know has been filtered through decades of oral tradition. Jesus likely spoke Aramaic as his primary language, not Hebrew or Greek. When he taught, he didn't speak in the formal, lofty language we often imagine. He used everyday metaphors that farmers, fishermen, and ordinary people would understand. He was, essentially, a Jewish apocalyptic preacher, one of many in first-century Palestine who believed the world was ending soon and that God would establish a new kingdom. What makes Jesus stand out historically? While many religious leaders of his time emphasized ritual purity and strict observance of religious law, Jesus consistently prioritized compassion and social inclusion. This was radical. In a deeply hierarchical society, he associated with tax collectors, prostitutes, and lepers, the untouchables of his day. This wasn't just kindness, it was politically subversive. Many scholars believe Jesus never intended to start a new religion. The earliest followers of Jesus, including his disciples, continued to worship at the temple and consider themselves Jews. The break between Judaism and Christianity happened gradually over decades, accelerated by the destruction of the temple in 70 CE and the increasing number of non-Jewish converts. Most people don't know that many of Jesus' teachings closely resembled those of the Pharisees, despite the Gospels often portraying them as his opponents. The famous Golden Rule, an emphasis on loving one's neighbor, existed in Jewish teaching before Jesus. What Jesus did was centralize these teachings and apply them in new contexts. The resurrection stories, the very foundation of Christianity, contain fascinating inconsistencies across the Gospels. The earliest Gospel, Mark, originally ended without resurrection appearances, while later Gospels add increasingly elaborate accounts. This doesn't necessarily disprove the resurrection, but shows how narratives evolved over time. Jesus' crucifixion, while often portrayed as unique, was tragically common. The Romans crucified thousands of people, particularly political rebels. What made Jesus' death significant was how his followers interpreted it, not as a defeat, but as a cosmic victory and sacrifice. Perhaps most surprising is how quickly Christianity spread despite persecution. Within 3 centuries, this marginalized Jewish sect became the official religion of the Roman Empire that had once executed its founder. This remarkable transition remains one of history's most astonishing social transformations. The historical Jesus was both more and less than the figure many worship today. More human, more embedded in his specific time and place, more politically dangerous to the powers of his day, but also less supernatural in how contemporary witnesses would have perceived him. A teacher and healer whose divinity was recognized gradually over time. Modern archaeological discoveries continue to illuminate Jesus' world. Excavations at Capernaum, Nazareth, and Jerusalem help us understand the physical environment where he taught. The Dead Sea Scrolls provide insight into the diversity of Jewish thought in Jesus' time. Yet despite all our research, the man himself remains enigmatic, neither fully confirmable by history nor dismissible as myth. What emerges is a figure who transcended his historical circumstances to become, regardless of one's religious beliefs, arguably the most influential person in human history. His teachings on compassion, forgiveness, and human dignity have resonated across cultures and centuries, often inspiring profound social change, even as institutions built in his name sometimes betrayed those very principles. This is the untold story of Jesus, not a simple tale of divine miracles, but the complex history of a Jewish teacher whose radical message of love, justice, and human dignity continues to challenge and inspire billions worldwide 2,000 years after his death.